all because they spurned what was a genuine offer of a truly fiscal conservative policy for what to do without surpluses in the year 2001.
If the chairman would yield. I do recall that very well. I was sitting on your committee, and you were almost begging the economic leadership of the Bush administration to follow the example that had been laid out by the 41st President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, when he began the system of pay-go that President Clinton then incorporated, raised taxes, but balanced the budget, and as a result generated more after-tax profit for the wealthiest people in America than ever been experienced, but provided the next president, George Bush the 43rd, with this $5.6 trillion projected surplus, sunny horizon almost as far as the eye could see, as now has turned into deep deficits, deeper than anything we can imagine, and we see no end for it. And in fact, it will bring us all the way to the point where you bring up, Mr. Chairman, when the baby boom generation retires and then puts an enormous additional burden on our budget. You asked Federal Reserve Chairman Greenspan if he would not impose some fiscal discipline on the administration, and asked whether we could really afford the 2001 and 2003 tax cuts. Because as we look back in retrospect, we see the reason that $5.6 trillion surplus that was projected was gone in 3 years. By 2004, that surplus was gone.
4 years, 236 surplus, $412 billion deficit.
I thought it was till January of 2004, but you would know better, Mr. Chairman. The point is, it was gone in a very short period of time. It was used on tax cuts that the vast majority of which went to the people who needed them the least, who then invested them in hedge funds, invested them overseas, put them into collateralized debt swaps and credit derivatives and every other kind of exotic investment. But they didn't go back into strengthening the economic foundation of the middle class. And as a result, we look back now and we see that those tax cuts, putting aside what we were promised, those tax cuts generate about 13 cents on the dollar. In other words, about 87 cents of every dollar of tax cut never went back into strengthening the economy. It showed up in deficits. And that's why this deficit situation is so difficult to deal with. We have to increase the deficit now to stimulate the economy, because the private sector was given $350 billion out of $700 billion, and they weren't willing to lend, so the public sector has to come in, but it's all on borrowed money, as you emphasized, Mr. Chairman. And again, it did not have to happen. You were there sounding the warning. It's on the record if anyone would choose to check. And yet you were ignored, and the members of your committee and the leadership, or at least on the Democratic side, was ignored. It seemed as though the policy was anything but the Clinton administration's economic policy, and now we find ourselves in as bad a situation as has existed almost for 75 years. So I greatly thank you for raising it.
Mr. Moran just had one final addition to what you just said. Not only did the deficit come down in 98, 99, the year 2000 and 2001 as a result of the Clinton administration's policies, but employment went up also. Every year, the bottom line of the budget got better and better and better for 8 straight years, and so did the job market, to the point where the average job creation in the Clinton administration was 230,000 jobs a month. 22 million jobs were created, as opposed to this dismal picture here for the last year of the Bush administration. 230,000 jobs a month on average. Altogether, 22 million jobs created during the Clinton administration. And it was connected with, I think, to some extent, the virtuous fiscal policy we were running at that time, which shows you that it does pay to have sound fiscal policy.
It was clearly connected to confidence in the economy, in the people that were directing the economy, in their reliance upon the private sector, but recognizing that the federal government had a role in terms of regulation, in terms of monetary policy, and in terms of balancing the budget. The budget was balanced, and it was creating jobs. And now to think we've gone from increasing jobs by 230,000 to losing 600,000 a month, 20,000 a day. Just an unbelievable reversal in terms of employment that parallels a fiscal reversal of $12 trillion from what the administration inherited to the situation we find ourselves in now.
Now let me turn to Ms.